Why are we still here? Just to suffer.
Well, it's finally time to review the second candidate for Anime of the Year in the spring season. Who is it third? Fourth? Fifth? Sixth? Jesus, this season was stacked. To Your Eternity was one hell of a ride. From episode 1 to the finale, I was emotionally invested in every scene, every moment of this show. And considering the popularity of this show, even from episode 1, I am confident I'm not alone when saying that. Oh yeah, the praise I'm gonna be giving this show will be so heavy, my praises for Wonder Egg Priority and Vivi will look weak in comparison. How can I not praise this show when it's made by Yoshitoki Oima, aka the girl who made a silent voice, aka the girl who made Shoko Nishimiya, aka the girl who made the girl I'd go on an errand like massacre if it meant seeing her smile. I make it no secret on my channel that I was heavily affected by a silent voice, so when I found out Oima made another anime, I was pretty excited to see what it would be like. Sadly, we don't get Kyoto Animation for this show, but we do get Brains Base, which is a pretty competent studio known for Bakano, Natsume's Book of Friends, D-Frag, and Spectre Dorawawa. I know there was too many Ys, sorry I flubbed it, and the first season of Snafu before Studio Fear would adapt the West, so not a bad studio by any means. The director is Masahiko Murata. I'm gonna be honest, I have no idea if he's good or not because I've seen none of the shows he's directed, but he did do a bunch of stuff for Naruto and he did some work on Tower of God, which I have seen. Man, I feel like I reference Tower of God way too much. With all that out of the way, let's begin. We start our journey with a godlike being. His name is the Beholder, and he also serves as the narrator for the show. The Beholder decides to create an orb that has the ability to change its form into something that gives it some sort of stimuli, and he puts it on Earth. The orb first turns into a rock, and then moss that was growing on the rock. The orb stays there for a while until one day an injured wolf takes its last breath on the orb. The orb takes form as the wolf. Now with mobility, and having the mind of an actual living thing, the orb begins to wander around, eventually meeting the owner of the wolf, a small boy who's trying to find his village. Despite being alone, the boy likes to talk to the wolf, not knowing the fact that his actual companion is dead. Eventually, the boy finds out what happens to his village and joins them, leaving the wolf behind. However, the orb takes the form of the boy, so now he has a human form, and this is the form he's in the most. His name was Fushi, and that fittingly means immortality, and that's what I'm calling him for the rest of the video. The rest of the plot is an adventure following Fushi split up into different arcs. Each arc affects Fushi differently, and over time he becomes more and more human. I'll talk about the rest of the story later when I'm talking about each of the arcs, but this is probably one of the more unique stories of the year. There is an issue with the story which I'll talk about later, but this story is definitely a positive. Each arc had a significant impact on me, an impact that is truly unforgettable. Fushi is definitely a strange case since he has the mind that is below an animal's for half of the show. A character like this shouldn't have this big of an effect on me, right? Well, he did. He definitely did. Throughout the show, we see Fushi grow from, well, what he was, to someone who could pass by as a regular human. He can talk, he can write, he has ambitions, he has emotions, he has morals. It is really enjoyable seeing his growth. Oh, get ready ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be talking about Fushi for a while. Each arc not only has an impact on the viewer, but Fushi as well. Fushi's arc at the beginning gave him his first friend, someone who didn't just wander around aimlessly. He had a goal that he wouldn't give up on, even when all hope was lost. March's arc gave him his first parents, as well as several other bonds he had never felt before since the boy died before he had a chance to really bond with him. This would be his first time experiencing what it's like to have that sort of relationship. Even though he was unaware throughout these two arcs, it still had an effect on him since he never forgot either of them. When that parent was taken away from him, he loses it. Again, it's the first weird time someone close to him was taken from him. This is crucial to his development since he would grow to become a person who feels the death of his friends. March's arc also made him realize the power he has, the ability to feel the feelings of people and animals. That would be important down the line too. Gugu's arc is probably one of, if not the most important arc in the show, mostly because Fushi is aware of things now. He can talk now, thanks to Pioran. Fushi gets a brother in Gugu, as well as another family like he had with March. When that family also gets taken away from him, he blames himself. He believes destruction follows him, and no matter what he does, everyone around him will die while he continues to live. Which leads me into Tonari's arc, which challenges Fushi's moral code. Due to previous events, Fushi hates death and doesn't want it to happen to anybody. Well, Tonari's arc questions that. What about people who have done horrible things? Do they deserve to die? Can Fushi kill those who wish to die in order to save his friends? How about somebody who did a lot of bad stuff to Fushi personally? Does she deserve to die? I love this arc and what it does to Fushi's character. Personality-wise, Fushi seems like a nice kid. Before he could talk, he mostly just mimicked what other people did, but as he grows, he cares deeply for his friends and hates death. He most certainly hates death. He also doesn't like the Beholder that much. Alrighty, so there are a lot of side characters. I'm not gonna go as in-depth with some of these characters as others. It's just some characters have less going on or just aren't as deep as some other characters. March is a little girl and is cute as a button. She wants to grow up and become a parent. She takes on a sort of motherly role for Fushi when he comes around, which is very adorable. Other than March, we also have Parona. Parona. I'm gonna call her Parona. She's a part of the same village as March, and March sees her as a big sister. She's one of the characters you'll get to know the most about first, since she goes against her village's practices. Can't specify on what those village practices are, but trust me, they're fucked up. She definitely has a good reason to go against this village. Her poor sister. She usually helps Fushi protect March, and is good with a bow. There's also Pioran, a former criminal who teaches Fushi most of the things he knows now. She wants to be more useful to Fushi, but due to her old age, it's kind of hard to do much. If only she was a little bit younger. The final character that's important in this arc is the main antagonist, Hayase. This bitch. I said I wasn't gonna go in depth, but this thing deserves it. She's from a different town called Yanome and wants to kill March. Can't get into details, just know she wants to kill the adorable child known as March, and that upsets me. This is where I talk about the weird side of a character and something I didn't see coming at all. After meeting Fushi, she becomes weirdly fascinated with him, to the point where she loves and is obsessed with Fushi. I mean, you don't strip and throw a dude on the bed and lick his face if you don't love him. Side note, it must be really weird to have this creepy bitch loving you. At least the other yanderes were hot. She wants Fushi all to herself and is willing to do anything, including kill, in order to have him all to herself. Fushi doesn't really like her though, for obvious reasons, which leads to a bunch of scenes I was not expecting in a show like this. She fucking licked him. Gugu is a nice kid. He is definitely best boy of the show, mostly because he's got some awful luck and I just feel really bad for him. He sees Fushi as his brother, mostly because his other brother was a fucking dick, and despite a rough start, they become very close. Rean is a witch girl and Gugu's crush. You get this weird love triangle thing because Gugu loves Rean, but Rean loves Fushi. That dude is an orb. How about you pay attention to the actual human who loves you, Rean? I enjoyed the witch girl poor boy dynamic between her and Gugu. Plus, her rebelling against her parents was pretty fun. A lot of people might not like her to start, but she definitely grows into a much more likable character towards the end of the arc. This arc also introduces the Nokkers, which are also antagonists. They pose a threat to Fushi because they can steal his forms. Every time Fushi fights one of these things, they get stronger and will follow him around constantly. I like what they do to Fushi's character, making him blame himself, but besides that, these things just aren't that interesting.
Now that that's over, allow me to introduce my crew. Dead 1, Dead 2, Dead 3, and
Tonari.
I'm the only one everyone cares about because I'm a cute girl.
And because she's the only one with actual depth. Seriously, I have nothing to say about a friend group, so we're just gonna talk about Tonari. Tonari is an interesting case because for whatever reason, everybody hated her guts when she first got introduced. I get it, alright. Tonari manipulated Fushi and Pioran into getting put on an island where everybody is a killer, which in turn led to Fushi participating in a death tournament, which led to him winning on Hayase again, which led to him getting lit by a naked Hayase, the latter of which being a punishment I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. I'm not saying the hate isn't justified, but context matters, y'all. This is a 14-year-old stuck on an island filled with bad guys with no family and only her friends. Yeah, she's manipulative at times, but I think it's a breath of fresh air to have a character Fushi despises at first. Also, we learn later on that she actually did get manipulated by Hayase. The immediate hate for a character just instantly reminded me of the hate Gabby got. A character people despise because of one thing they did. Meanwhile, if you think about it from their point of view, you can understand why they did the thing they did. Sure, she used Fushi, but she did it to help her island. Hayase used this girl's innocent wish for her own lust and y'all hated Tonari in this situation? Plus, Tonari has plenty of good qualities and even saved Fushi many times. Unlike Gabby, I feel like Tonari changed a lot of people's opinions about her. I understand hating a character for doing something bad to the main character, but for those who do have that mindset, can you at least try to look at the character's actions from their own point of view? Tonari felt bad for what she did and we paid for her actions later on. Just wait a bit to see if the character you hate so much turns out to be not as bad as you originally thought. Basically, the too long didn't listen version of this rant is, don't be reactionary. I liked a lot of the cast in the show. Sure, they got their issues, but each were enjoyable. Fushi was great to watch and each of the side characters had an effect on his growth. I enjoyed it. Pioran, best girl, guys, am I right? Am I right? No? Okay, well, let's get on to the positives. Let's start off with the animation. I'm a pretty big fan of it. Compared to other Anime of the Year contenders, maybe it's not as good, but it does have its moments. I was really surprised by the action scenes and how well they were done. The fight with the bear was extremely entertaining, and that first fight with Hayase, man, the emotion was there. Speaking of which, let me talk about a scene that comes right after that fight. Spoilers ahead, just so you know. The scene where March is dead and is a ghost, Hayase is down, Parona is holding on to her dead friend with a sharp object. At this point, I'm still not over the fact March died, but when she almost killed herself, which March trying to stop it but couldn't, March pleading not to do it, begging Fushi to help, it almost made me have a clan ad level moment. You almost got me. You piece of shit. That scene is a pretty good example of the beauty this show has at times. The soundtrack in this show, you know how long I've been wanting to talk about this OP? You have no idea, and now I finally get to. First up, Hikaru Utada. She sang for the Evangelion movies, and I really like her voice. She does her thing here. This OP is packed with emotion. It even beats out Wonder Egg Priority in that category for me. I'm not a massive fan of songs with just pianos, and while I did find Wonder Egg Priority's opening emotional, it was mostly for the singers. But this one makes me feel a lot more, while also having energy behind it to keep the song entertaining throughout. One thing I love about this OP is the choice in visuals. Look very closely during the middle section of this OP. You can see what each side character wished for. As that's playing, you can also see the unfortunate reality appear above it. They never got to do what they wanted. Gugu never got to protect Rean, also his face is out. March never grew up, Parona never found her sister, Tonari's friends never lived to see the island be peaceful, not talking about the pink-haired girl, massive spoiler, and at the end of it, Fushi's family never got to eat together. That detail made me really love the OP. Sure, the OP is one massive spoiler, but I think it's subliminal enough to where you won't notice it's a spoiler until after Gugu's arc. Not as much to say about the ending, but as a fan of cool looking art, I love this ending. Look at how detailed everything is. It perfectly matches the song too. I am pleased. As far as the songs in the background go, they're pretty emotional. Look, I'm not the best at noticing those, but they're not distracting or anything either, so I guess it's cool. I do love the character design in this show. Look at March. I say look at her, damn it. Despite me making jokes about her this entire video, Hayase's design at the end of the series is something I like. I'm a fan of the scars on her eyes since she did get destroyed by Fushi last time, and she just looks like a crazy person who's been hunting for a person for years. Freaking look at her, dude. She's creepy. Get away from me, you psycho bitch. I also like the fact that Fushi does age if he stays in a form for a longer period of time. Look at older Fushi in his facial hair. Look at even older Fushi in his facial hair. Ooh, you can't end a season like this. What the hell? As I said at the beginning of this video, there is one notable problem with this show, and now let's finally talk about it. Listen, I love the story for this show. I do. But it's got an issue. The problem is it becomes very predictable after a while. During March's arc, unexpected. You had no idea the pain was coming. Gugu's arc, you had a feeling the pain was coming, but it was still emotional when it did. But sadly, Tonari's arc was the third time we saw this same story play out. Sure, I loved Tonari's arc, since Tonari being hated by Fushi was unique and I loved the way it tested Fushi's morals, but at its core, it's the same thing.
It's like missionary position.
You meet new characters and you already know, alright, these dudes are dead. What happens? Oh, look, they died. It just lacks the emotional punch the other arcs had since you've already seen this play out. And before someone says something, yeah, I know Tonari and Sandal lived, but still, the deaths that did happen didn't affect me as much as the previous is all I'm saying. It doesn't help the pacing seemed way quicker in Tonari's arc than the others as well. They didn't really develop the side characters as much as I feel they should have. It mostly focused on Tonari. So when these kids do meet their fates, you don't really feel much because you didn't know them that much. If this cast was actually developed, maybe I'd feel differently, but for now, the only issue this show has is that the plot gets very predictable during Tonari's arc. To Your Eternity is really good, you guys. Like, really good. It's an emotional adventure with likable characters, good animation, and a fantastically unique story. Give it a watch if you haven't already. I'm Kikaya, and see you next time.